So Ali, how was your week?
A bit more of a sad week this week. We lost our little dog BB just before her 7th birthday, so I'm using this mug in honor of her today. So we've been grieving in the house, but we didn't have long to grieve because it's been a busy week as normal. And so we remember her, but on Monday, I went to Abu Dhabi and I was with Aston. He was doing his first full arch immediate loading case. And I believe it was the first one in Aberdare town.
Oh wow.
Jamie Pugh's dental practice, really nice guy. Jamie, he was really proud, and it's a family-owned practice that's been there, I think, over 30 years. So really cool that Aston did this there for a lovely patient, and he did a fantastic job and changed a life. So that was really nice to be part of. And then that took us through to Saturday, where we had the IDAW conference that I will let you talk about. But the really nice thing in context of BB and everything that happened was that a few days after she passed, I had to teach a course. And it was really nice that the whole team turned up to support. I didn't know they were going to be there. And the whole team was there for me at the course. And it's kind of really made me reflect on practice ownership, which is relevant to today. So yeah, how was your week?
I had quite a busy week. I have a little bit of a chest infection, so I went to the doctor, and it was quite weird because her style of sort of examining and consulting was very similar to my style, and it was weird to sort of be confronted by that. I was like, oh, we say very similar things, but the only big difference is she actually asked, so what do you think is wrong? Which I thought would be hilarious if we asked in dentistry.
Opening a can of worms with our patients, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely down a rabbit hole there. And then, yesterday we did the IDAW conference, which there was two speakers there. First one was Mike Hesketh.
Hesketh, yeah.
Talking all about sort of practice ownership and how to sort of build your brand into your practice. I think it was really interesting being there. Most 95% of the people there owned a practice already, and it was me and Hannah Crowe were there who don't own a practice, and I think it was actually really interesting being there at a stage where you don't own one and seeing actually things to look out for if you were going to buy a practice, sort of to begin with, sort of on that blank slate. Like didn't have anything going like, oh, I didn't do this, I did this there. It was very, like, oh, complete blank canvas. So I found that very interesting there.
I'm glad I hadn't learned all of that before I owned a practice, because I think it would have made me think there's so much more to this than I realized. But yeah, I mean, Mike's story is interesting. So he was in the military, and then him and his wife had a practice that they sold. They went traveling with their kids because they were 3 and 5, and I thought those ages were really interesting before they start school. So they sold the practice and went traveling for a year. And then they are running a Hesketh consultancy, which it was interesting because yesterday I put up some pictures on Instagram after the course, and my friend Gareth Edwards that I lived with in university has a really cool practice in Bournemouth called Smile Stories, with Zach and the rest of the team there. And he said that they're working with Mike. And I thought that was interesting because Gareth is very forward thinking, and it makes sense that they'd work together. But yeah, I thought it was an excellent day, and I think Helen and Ian and the rest of the IDAW team did a really good job organizing it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, it was really well organized. Great food as well. And I actually think the vegan food was better than the other option.
Yeah,
I mean,
ate
I'm
some
very
of the vegan
biased,
food.
but everyone sort of said that. So.
Yeah, no, it was. And that's important when you're spending a day away from family or from work or whatever it is. It's nice if all that stuff's nice. But for me, I haven't. We always talked about, as when I was on the IDAW committee, about having a big picture day that helps you reflect on your business, because some things are too abstract and then some things are too clinical. And this was actually about literally the nitty gritty of running a practice. So did it make you want to have a practice, or did it put you off having a practice?
I think it put me off a little bit, to be honest. I think there's so much to think about. I still think potentially one day I may own a practice, but definitely for now, there's no short-term, immediate aspirations for it. So.
He's made me think you can have mine if you want. No, No, he kind of painted a picture. I thought it was really interesting because it highlighted to me the way, and I spoke to Mike about this, so I don't mind saying it, that everyone assumes that you have a practice for certain reasons. And a lot of practice owners share those reasons, but I found it interesting to really find out what an outlier I am. And it was interesting because I have been following a lot of advice, but maybe based on assumptions about why I have a practice from the people giving the advice. And I think maybe I need to be more clear with the people around me who are helping us run the practice. So it's actually perfect timing for the topic for today.
Yes, no, definitely. So today we are going to talk about being a practice owner, and touch on as well that work-life balance, which I think inevitably comes into being a practice owner. What is your story then of how you got this practice?
So it's funny because actually the story starts right behind us in this waiting room. And it was actually, this practice was owned by a friend of ours from university and his wife. So Imran and Emily Qasim owned this practice. And at the time I was traveling around as a peripatetic implant surgeon. So 7 practices I was visiting. And one of them was in Worcester. And Worcester was lovely, but there was no one around doing implants. And I thought it would be really cool to come do this here. Plus, it wasn't raining much. And it's raining all the time in Wales. Actually, we were talking to someone at the conference about this, but they were from Ireland, so they thought the weather's not that bad in Wales. We thought, why don't we see if we can set up a squat practice in Worcester? And the only person we knew who had set up a squat practice was Imran. So I messaged him and I said, can we come and chat to you? And we hadn't been to the practice. And we came in and he showed us around. We were like, wow, this is amazing. It's really nice in here. So we said, well, there's 2 things we'd really love. One is for you to tell us how do you get money to do something like this? Like, how do you approach a bank and get lending step by step? And also, can we have your floor plans? Because we love this. And he said, well, do you want this? And laughed. And I went, yeah. And I laughed. And he went, no, seriously. We're looking to sell this. And I went, yeah, we'll have it. And Zara said, can we talk about this, please? And that night we kind of left, and I was saying, we live down the road. We've been in Cardiff a long time. We have family here. We have the opportunity to stay and do this. That would be amazing. And the best part of any deal is when it's a win-win. And Imran really wanted to get out of dentistry. And so we started chatting I believe it was right at the end of 2019. And then COVID hit right while we were talking about this. And he was kind of like, well, it's now or never, which is fair enough because so we kind of took over COVID. But that was how we got into this practice. But we had bid for a practice a long time ago and didn't get it. And we were really disappointed. But looking back, it's lucky it didn't work out. With most things in life, I think you find that. But it was actually at a point where I was driving around to those 7 practices, and every practice I was walking into, I was getting frustrated. And it was kind of like well, if you're going to criticize this much, then do it yourself. And I thought, you know what? I think I'd watched too many movies around that time, but there's old movies where there's a family business and they own a shop and it's the family and their kids help out in the shop, and any employees they have, they all know each other really well. They're part of a small community. And let's say they have an employee who has a child and the child has a sports day, and they say, of course, go, we've got you covered. And there's no shareholders and there's no computer says no. And I think I have had really good experiences working with corporates, but I found that part of it really frustrating, that this hierarchy and the red tape. And it's the same reason I don't do well in dental hospitals. I don't like the red tape. So so this was an opportunity to move away from that.
Nice. So the question really then is sort of what should everyone buy a practice?
So it was funny because in dental school, that was kind of one of the things that I think there were a lot of people in our year who thought that was the natural progression. You do dentistry, you go be a dentist, and then you go have a practice. I really think that we never think about the fact that these are completely different jobs.
Yeah.
So running a business, we aren't trained for. And that becomes painfully obvious when you run a business. So we're not trained to run a business. We're trained to do clinical work. And if we do postgrad, we're trained to do academic work. And there's loads of other opportunities within dentistry that aren't related to business. But I think that it depends. And I'm really glad I didn't buy a practice when I first qualified because I didn't really understand this. So I think it depends what you want to do every day.
No, I think I do think with dentistry, it's quite wild that everything at dental school is very focused on, you know, this is how you drill a tooth, this is how you fill a tooth. And then you go into the wide world and actually you're expected to do so many different roles just within your job, even as an associate, and understanding sort of the self-employment and the finance side of that. And then if you take over a business, you're suddenly this business owner.
Yep.
And you're managing a team, and you might not have ever actually had to manage a team before. And it's that whole thing, isn't it, where actually sometimes it's not just because you're very good at your job should you be promoted to manager.
Yeah.
I think it's an incredibly sort of interesting thing. So when you were sort of looking around the sort of the Worcester practice in here, what were the things sort of you were looking at that sort of just sold it to you as I want this practice?
Well, we were going to build something in Worcester, so there wasn't even a template there. It was that, so I guess the place to start is that you have two choices. You either buy an existing practice or you start your own. That's what a squat practice is. It's starting right from scratch. Now, there's pros and cons to both. My advice for young dentists out there is I really believe the best way to do it is to start a squat practice.
Okay.
And the reason for that is when you buy a practice, you buy something called goodwill. There is no goodwill. Goodwill doesn't exist. You buy a practice and you are buying a list of patients that you have to earn to keep, right? And okay, fine. It means there's footfall right from the beginning. You're not in an empty building. So you are buying that value. But the fact is, and I think most practice owners who have bought a practice will tell you that actually the people who you don't resonate with will leave in terms of your patients, and new ones will come in. And you don't own these people. You haven't bought them, right? So goodwill is expensive, and there's a multiplication factor on the turnover that you pay for this goodwill. And so like Mike was saying to us yesterday, if there's a distressed practice, there might be value in it. If people need a quick sale or they just don't know how to get the potential that you see, that's cool. But you're stuck with many things. You're stuck with their patient list, you're stuck with their infrastructure, you're stuck with the team that works there. And sometimes it's harder to turn the direction a ship is going in than to just build your own lifeboat.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's a terrible analogy, but so the thing about a squat though is it's scary because there's no footfall, and you have to do things that you're even less trained for. So clinically, we're trained not to do clinical work to a perfect level at university, but we're taught how to think and we're taught how to research. So the idea is, if you need to do a procedure or you need to do something that's a little bit different to what you've done, you can read the literature about it, and then you can apply your theoretical knowledge and you have some dexterity skills. From business side, you know nothing. And so you're having to plan possibly building or redoing a building. You're planning putting in surgeries that have things that I'd never thought about, the services going to the chairs, the type of chairs. You're dealing with, for us, HIW, but in England, CQC and regulations. And then managing the building, all of these huge things.
Yeah.
So a squat practice has its own downside, and then you have to fill the building up. So you got to be ready for scary times financially, and then eventually when there is value, it's your value.
So then what does your day look like as a practice owner?
So what does it look like now versus what it did look like when we started? It really varies, and the one thing that has really changed how my day goes is we've now learned where to go for things. So I we aren't trained in HR. We have external HR support. We're not trained in accountancy. We have external accountancy support, IT support. So I was liaising with all of these people, and then we've always believed in having a practice manager, but our practice manager was more kind of acting as a head nurse. Having an amazing practice manager that liaises with all of these people as well as the team means that my day very much consists of dealing one-on-one with the practice manager. Alex, she's amazing, who then is very good at implementing things. So my day now is working. I do a lot of clinical work because I love it. So to go back to the reason most people have a practice, I believe, is the ideal for them would be to have a practice that they then don't have to work in, and they own a business and they work on the business at their leisure and it makes money. That's not why I have a practice. I have a practice because I wanted the environment to do what I love doing, which is the clinical side. Working on everyone talks about, you're meant to work on the business, not in the business. But my day actually consists of both, but to the degree that I want, because the team are so good. And then we're all different, right? So as individuals, we all have different strengths. So some people might be really good at processes. Some people might be really good at a technical thing. Some people might be really good at big picture thinking, but not implementing. So I think having a vision and then communicating that vision is one of my strengths. So I spend a lot of time with each individual team member. So my day will consist of coming in and chatting to everyone and spending time with them before we see the patients, and then catching up with Alex and making sure everything's on track. But it can be a day of firefighting if you don't have the external support and you don't organize yourself.
Fair enough. So what strengths then do you think does make a good practice manager, not practice manager, practice owner?
Well, so this is the thing. You are going to be who you are, and you need to consider your weaknesses and work on them. But the biggest change came about. We do a growth day every year. And one year we had personality testing done. And so we looked at the personalities, and we had a lot of very similar personality types. And so it's not about what makes you a good practice owner. It's about making sure that you are self-aware of your weaknesses and you surround yourself with people whose strengths are your weaknesses and balancing that out. So I guess self-awareness is probably the most important factor, and just knowing we're not all good at everything. And there are a lot of people around me, my team, who I will defer to for a lot of decisions because they're better at those things than I am. And if you just want to be in charge, it's probably not going to go well.
Fair enough. No
everyone
dictator.
Everyone might disagree and say that's exactly what I am.
You actually need that. So if you were thinking sort of as a young dentist, sort of like, I do think I want to buy one day, how far in advance do you think you really need to be sort of properly thinking about it, as in terms of like thinking about your finances or sort of looking around at markets and things like that?
I think it's always a good idea at the beginning of your career I say to everyone, because this advice was given to me and I think it's great advice, when you finish your foundation training, keep living like you're doing your foundation training, and keep your finances the same. And everything you earn on top of that for 5 years, keep saving. And that money that you save is either going to go towards something personal like a house or traveling for a year, equipment, whatever it is, or it will go towards a practice, or it will go towards courses. I think the key is to stay prepared, is my advice. And so there isn't a defined time period where, make sure, because how do you know for 3 years before you buy a practice that you're going to want to practice? You might realize, and then it's about opportunity at that stage. So I'd also say, like, don't put too much pressure on yourself to know. If you think you want one and the right project comes around and you find yourself wanting it, that's probably a good sign. But I think it's really important to think about why you want to practice.
Fair enough. So you said you went to Imran at the beginning, originally with the question of like, how do you do all of this? What are the sort of the little things of how do you get sort of an accountant involved? Do you get a property manager. That's I'm lost all my words.
An estate
Estate
agent. Yeah, property manager.
That's not the right word.
So I think the answer is there are people who are very good at this. People like Mike Hesketh and Hesketh Consultancy, or by the way, I have to give a shout out. My accountants, Lewis Ballard, I think a lot of their dental specialist accountants, a lot of people use them. They're brilliant at this kind of thing because they're not just accountants. They drive your business. And the key is I had them as my accountants when I was an associate, and they used to say to me, "You ever think of having a practice?" You know, they kind of planted the seed because they could see that it's something that I might want to do or might be good at. And having these people in your corner, they support you through all of this. So they look at whether the practice that you're looking at, or the acquisition, or the startup you're looking at is viable. They guide you on that. They then put you in touch with the right experts, with lawyers and with people who plan surgeries. And there is a network of people who do this for a living. And so I'd say one of the things is always, whether you're an associate or a practice owner, always be with really good accountants, because they will get you the best jobs. They will make sure things go well for you. They have the whole network, to do that.
That's good. I'll have to write that name down.
Yeah.
What do you think is sort of the hardest thing about being a practice owner?
The hardest thing, I think, is that, okay, so I am the poorest and the happiest I've ever been. And I think I speak to people and have to deal with situations where people assume that when you own a practice, and this is not practice owners. Practice owners know that we all, you know, some practices are doing very well and they're geared towards making a lot of money. Most practice owners know that we take out last. And so when you're dealing with people in the industry, employees, associates, who assume that it's easy for you to say, and they assume that you get a lion's share of things. When the fact is, you'll make more as an associate unless you're running a business to just make money.
Yeah.
And that's not what I do. So it's the assumption that I find very difficult to deal with, because it makes it really difficult to communicate. But with our team is lovely, and they see it as, we are very transparent about things because we need their buy-in to make this work. And they see that I make a lot less money than if I was an associate. And that's because I want to make this place work, and I want to make all the team's lives better. And so there's a lot of buy-in and there's a lot of support because of that.
I think that's really lovely. And actually, talking about the team, this was one thing that came up yesterday that I didn't agree with, but I wonder what your view on it is. Should you eat with your team as the practice owner?
We built this place so I can hang out with my friends and do arts and crafts all day and not feel like it's work. And that's literally what we do. So we make sure that everyone that we bring in, clinicians or support staff, are lovely people that we like spending time with. And we're doing work that we don't think is work. And I don't understand why you wouldn't eat with your team, why you wouldn't want to be part of this community that you're building.
No, I completely agree. For me, I think it's a red flag when someone doesn't eat with their team.
I agree, yeah.
Because I think it is that you're then all part of this community and you're all in it together. And I think otherwise it creates such a hierarchy there that I personally don't like it. I do appreciate some people say about, you know, they're more comfortable talking without you there. But I suppose they could blur lines then between sort of that friendship professional. But I think actually, if you've got the right team in the first place, that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. Well, another red flag is if you work at a practice where the owner refuses to work with certain staff members, says they're not good enough, because then they're okay hiring people who aren't good enough, and they're okay asking you to work with them. And so I think, you know, basically you want the practice to treat everyone the same. You want the practice owner to be filling the building with people that they would be happy working with personalities that they want to spend time with. This is the difference between someone owning a business and someone building a practice, I think.
Yeah. How do you split your week up in terms of between sort of being the practice owner, the clinical work? Life outside.
So yeah, my 7 day weekend, my 7 day
Yeah.
work week. So, I know we've spoken to people who have been saying that their clinical days are clinical days and their non-clinical is non-clinical. I think that's because they find one or other stressful and they want the headspace. And I completely understand that. We're all different. But for me, I do a bit of everything every day. So when Lilia, my daughter, was born, the practice was at a point where I couldn't take time off. So I had a week off. And when I came back, though, I was only back for a few hours a day. And it gave me the opportunity to change my working times. So I start work late every day. I start work at about 11:30. And in the morning, I spend time with Lilia. I go to the gym and I get a lot of admin done. Then when I come in, I meet with Alex, who's practice manager. We go through the tasks for the day. She gets on with them. I'm seeing patients. And in between, if she has questions, she'll pop in. And between 11:30 and 5:30, I am there. I'm 100%. And I've used my morning to give me the balance to make me the best version of myself for those 6 hours. And then I go home for bath time.
You are very good, I must admit, at making sure you are home for that bath time.
Yeah.
When you would go to the train yesterday, I was like, go, just get on the train.
So this is the thing. I felt bad because you're at a conference, and like Owen had come from Pembrokeshire.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen him in ages. And it was 5:30, and everyone's going to the bar, and I had a soda water, and I got on the train because I said I'm not missing bath time. In fact, the only thing I've missed bath time for is for the live feed today, so we could make sure everything was working. But I think, the thing about owning a practice is it can chip away and take more and more from you, and you have to really draw the lines, and it can make you take more and more away from your team. So, messaging team members on weekends and evenings and then demanding more and more from people, you burn people out. I've burnt people out. And so I've learned, actually, you know what? We all need boundaries. So when we're here, we're present, we're 100%. We set our own deadlines. So I don't say to someone, oh, you have until this date to do this. We talk about a project, say, what do you think is a reasonable deadline? And then we can work around that. But the fact is that actually, when everyone's happy, we're more productive. And so this balance is my happiness.
Well, and that takes us very nicely into work-life balance there. And I completely agree. I am definitely someone that morning is so vital for setting the rest of the day. And I use that to run and gym and sometimes make things for the podcast and things like that. But I am not a nice person if I've not been on a run. And I know that about myself, and I will hold my hands up and say it. But yeah, having that exercise, I mean, I'm personally in the camp. I think everyone should be doing some sort of exercise every day. Whether that is, and I appreciate it's different levels for different people, but even just that walk or something in the morning, I just think you can then come to work in such a better place. You've got those endorphins. You've had that morning light and everything. And I think that's so valuable for then actually getting the most out of yourself at work.
I completely agree, but then I also understand people who say they work 3 long days to have 4 days off to go surfing for 4 days because that's their passion. That's cool too. Yeah. I just don't think dentists working clinically after the first couple of years of their career should be doing 5 or more days a week. And I think if you're doing 5 days, that's fine, but then your days should be shorter. Because I just think, how do you get the rest of these things in otherwise?
No, it's very true. Just don't stop.
Don't stop what?
Just don't stop. Don't stop moving ever.
Yeah.
Just literally run, gym, work, create something.
But
sleep.
This is where, see, we're in such a volatile profession, and practice ownership is like this as well, by the way, because we don't just have our clinical issues, because biology is biology and treatments come with risk. You then also have the crises. The biggest issue we have when we're running a practice is the one thing that you can't control is humans. So, staff issues. And it could be that someone's called in sick. It could be that someone's having a problem. It could be that you're short-staffed. These are the things, because we're dealing with human beings and we need to help them rather than think of them as an obstacle. But if you think that you've been running full tilt, going full steam ahead on everything, you haven't been exercising, you're not the best version of yourself, you're probably not sleeping as well then, you haven't had much time off, you're close to burning out, something goes wrong clinically, something goes wrong with the business, and mentally, it's a huge burden. And so I think it's really important that we all have some mental reserve in the bank so that when things go wrong, we can look after ourselves.
Oh, yeah. How do you sort of draw, I don't know, we've spoken about boundaries, but draw the line and work out sort of when it's better to sort of be focusing on growing your career and when sort of making time for friends and family? Because I appreciate sort of on average they can stay separate, but it does get to points where you're always going to get overlap. And how do you work out what to prioritize?
You know, it's a really unfair thing for me to comment on because all of us are different and all of our experiences are different. I hope if Mike Hesketh listens to this, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, I think it's amazing that his wife mentioned that Mike lost his dad early on in his life, and that was the motivation behind selling the practice and spending a year traveling with their kids. And I think that's amazing. Like we all have the opportunity to shape our lives through these decisions. And I guess the most important thing is not when you pick family and when you pick the business. It's to be making a really conscious decision every time, because what can happen is we convince ourselves that what we do is so important. Oh, I'm so important. I'm so important. I have such important things to do. I have a practice. I have 10 people depending on me, right? And we tell ourselves the story and it makes us feel good to be busy and important. But the fact is that that story can chip away at the things like the weekends and the evenings, and for me, the bath times. And so I think it's really important that each of those decisions is not taken lightly. It's a conscious, I am picking family or I am picking work, and this is why this time. And then to do that every time so that it never becomes autopilot.
Yeah, I think that's, it's knowing when to say no and sort of, getting those boundaries in place. I think, human beings, we're creatures of habit in general.
Yeah.
So it's making sure you're not in that sort of overdrive habit from the start, because otherwise that's going to become your norm.
Yeah, I agree. And also the type of, the team around you can make a big difference to this. So, you know, we're now at a point, I'd say, for the first time, where we have the right team in place. And I feel like that takes so much burden off of us and allows me to put my family first a lot of the time, which, you know, we can all say, oh, always put family first. But the fact is, like, you have to put your career first sometimes, maybe once in a day, maybe not necessarily every day for a year, but having a team that you invest in and look after, rather than seeing what you can get out of them, puts you in a position where they look after the business and they look after you and allow you to have that balance. So I would say for anyone considering having a practice, what you put in is what you'll get out. And if what you want to get out is balance and low stress, then be generous with the spoils that come from the business.
Oh, well, that's really, really nice.
Great advice from someone who's the poorest he's ever been. Yeah.
Actually, listeners who are watching live, if anyone wants to comment sort of what their sort of current things they do for balance, that would be great. We can get sharing on some different things. I know personally, recently I was really reaching my tether I'd taken on a few too many projects all in one go, and I ended up sort of having a day where I sat and I did a paint by numbers for the full day, and just with some music on. I really just got in a complete flow state. I'm not a painter or anything like that. It was actually Tom's Christmas present, so I basically did the whole thing for him. And
brilliant.
But it was lovely, and I actually was able to sort of really unwind, and through sort of being in that flow state, then focus on, okay, this is what I need to be prioritizing and when. And actually, sometimes I think it is really important that sometimes you do take that step back sort of completely and spend sometimes that alone time as well to work out actually what you want to be prioritizing. And you can then come up with plans and strategies as well then. But I think sometimes people look at it and think, oh, you wasted a day there. And I know I've been in that state before, but actually it was so useful for me.
It's an investment, right? Like one of my friends, Mark, who's my neighbor as well, he goes for he has a big company, not dental, and he goes for a walk up a mountain once a week or once every 2 weeks with key members of his team. And that means that, I mean, I know this is a little bit different to what you were saying, but it's a change of perspective, it's a change of pace, it's a change of environment. And I think that's really important. It's why, okay, so on a day-to-day or weekly basis, you need to have that to unwind for yourself. But I think, even as a practice owner, we need to do that as teams and sub-teams. So we have a strategy day where myself, Zara as the directors, and Alex, the practice manager, go away for a day to talk about the next year and what we're going to do. And then as a team, we go away for our growth day. And then individually, there will be a day where I have a list of things to do just like you. And I go, I'm going to play video games today. Because that's what my mind and body need. Yeah. And I think it's really important that we allow ourselves that we don't guilt ourselves from, we come from such a competitive and academic background that people forget, it doesn't matter. Everyone you see, this was really interesting. I was listening to someone talk about the fact that the people who have the best work-life balance, it's because they've been through a period where they have the worst work-life balance. They've burnt out and then they've gotten to this stage.
Yeah.
And I think that when you burn out, you realize what's important and how to balance it for sure.
Oh no, definitely. I think also actually what you're saying, I do think walking meetings are fantastic. Maybe all your meetings should be walking up mountains now, and Ali.
Yeah, if it wasn't raining all the time, I'd happily do that. No, but also this is the other thing. It's as a practice owner, you can spend all day having meetings and talking and getting wrapped up in things. And actually, I think one of the skills that I'm really glad I was on dental committees, and I think this is really important. If any practice owners have been on any committee, I think for me the most useful one was being on the board of directors for the ADI, the Association of Dental Implantology, because it's a charity with trustees. So when you're on the board of directors, you have a huge responsibility, and there is a way that everything is done, right? So the way things are agreed, the way things are voted on, there are rules to everything. And understanding how these big structures work helps you understand how you need to structure even a smaller company and how decisions can and should be made and how consequences work and all of that. So I think it's really important if you're considering having a practice to have some kind of business understanding, and it could actually come from being involved in these really cool societies that we have in dentistry.
Oh yeah, I think there's such a network, isn't there, to actually, so much knowledge out there to dive into with other people and
yeah. The thing is, a lot of what's happening more and more now is that people will sell you their knowledge, and that's fair enough. It's mentorship, and we talk about mentorship surgically, clinically, and from a business point of view. But actually, what you kind of need in order to run a practice is to develop yourself, your vision, your ideas, your confidence, and to understand how you're going to run the thing. And I think a lot of that can start early on. And even if you end up not owning a practice, it will help you as a person in dealing with your patients.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, like being there yesterday, it's things I think as an associate you don't always think of all the time. But being aware of how the business is run and actually what your part in all of it can be, and yeah, how when you do something with a patient, how that actually can build that bigger picture as well.
I was a nightmare of an associate, and I only realized when something I've said over the years was said to me, which is, this is what I give up my percentage for you to deal with this. And it made my blood boil when it was said to me, because there is such a sense of entitlement. And I have to say, I had the same sense of entitlement. I'm not saying I was different as an associate, but any practice owner will now tell you associates are expensive, and they have no idea what kind of work it takes to keep a practice open. And I not you, Flo, not you, but generally speaking, and I think what I'd love is I think it would be great in dental school. What they should do is they should have a week where we all, in schools they give students a bag of flour to keep alive. That's your baby, right? Every dental student should get a practice to keep open, and they should just simulate all the problems that we have week on week and make it their problem, so that when they walk into a job, they are different.
I was trying to think what I could symbolize a practice then, rather than a bag of flour, maybe a potato or something. I know you men look after an actual one, but that's
Like
where
maybe,
my
maybe a
brain went.
potato on fire? No,
Yeah.
no. I no,
Doesn't
I
like a
mean,
jack of potato.
I mean, they talk to us about leadership in a surgery, right?
Mm.
But what they actually, you know, because in a hospital, someone who's head of a clinic doesn't actually deal with all the building maintenance and all of that. What we should do is we should have a setup where dental students should get to visit a practice and kind of just be seeing behind the scenes and what's happening for an owner. I think, you know, actually maybe this is something, you know, postgrad should consider, but I think
Yeah.
it'd be really useful to know what your day to day is, because everyone thinks of something when they think of practice ownership. They either think, oh, it's so much hassle, or oh, I'm going to make so much money, or oh, I get to pick my hours. You work more as a practice owner. You just, a lot of it you get to choose when you work, which is nice, but you're still working more. But having insight might show them what they're not seeing, because a lot of people say, oh, I bought a practice and it was the worst thing I did, and now I don't have a practice and I'm really happy being an associate. But they weren't happy before because the grass is always greener.
Yeah, I must admit that one of the, I was taking on the mentor year last year, you were very kind and have shown me a lot of behind the scenes, and that has been so invaluable, actually working out how things run, because I didn't really have that knowledge at all before, and I do think it should make me a better associate, actually, through having that knowledge and appreciating actually what the other half of your split, like you said, go towards, and it's
Yeah.
not just materials and you're having your nurse. There's so much more.
And you know what? I love it. I wouldn't be happy if I weren't doing this job, which includes complex clinical as well as running the business. But I think, you know, for example, let's use a scenario. It's the problem solving. So one of the conversations that we might have in front of you, so that you could see this as a mentee, was Alex might say, let's chat about this issue. There is a dentist, by the way, I've made this up, but it's kind of
Insert name here.
yeah, no, it's kind of representative of a typical problem that I think you'd see, that this dentist or this nurse is not happy working with this dentist for these reasons. And then we have to deconstruct that whole problem and look at the steps towards a solution. And then we have to think about long-term management of this. And it's difficult because the hardest problems to solve involve people and personalities. Whereas it's easy if something's not working, we
Yeah.
get someone to fix it. I mean, it might be expensive and that's not ideal, but that's relatively easy, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I know I've spoken about them before, but my brothers, I think they've done incredibly well in their careers because they're very good people managers.
Yeah.
And that is such a big key and sort of aspect, I think, that is so often missed in any work space. But actually, if you've got someone who's good at managing people, that is completely invaluable.
So the problem is when a practice owner doesn't realize that they're not very good with people, and then they deal with people and they do all the HR stuff. It's also just people don't want to pay for outside expertise. And, you know, I thought it was really cool what Mike was saying yesterday. He was saying that we are custodians of this business. And so we're there to protect the business and to protect the people whose income comes from it. Because we have a lot of employees who their families depend on that income. And when we think about it that way, like, we need to know that we're operating within rules that are not just fair and moral, but also will protect the business itself so that it carries on as it is. And so I think a lot of practice owners take a lot on themselves, and they sit there late at night reading regulations and dealing with, you know, I need to understand HR because I need to deal with this issue. There are HR people out there. They will come in and they will know and they will sort it out, and they are nice and they're easy to deal with. And it takes them half an hour to deal with a problem that would have taken you 24 hours. And their rate is very fair compared to your clinical rate if you spent that time getting some balance and doing some clinical work. So I think if you want to enjoy running a practice and you want to run a practice, then get comfortable with outsourcing some stuff.
No, I think that's really useful tip there to end with. If anyone does watching have any questions, please write them in now. I did get a couple together from some people beforehand who knew they couldn't tune into the live. So one person asked, what are the potential sort of personal challenges or sacrifices associated with owning a practice?
Ooh. I, off the top of my head, I can't think of any because I feel like I made more sacrifices as an associate.
Okay.
I work a lot more now and I work harder and I get paid less, but I don't miss family events and I don't miss courses that I really want to do, which I've had to in practices because they say, oh, but no one's here to cover emergencies. Whereas now I go, no, this is really important. Like this course, this person is retiring and this is the last time they're teaching this course and I'd love to go on this course. So I don't have a problem with working lots of hours. It doesn't feel like work. So if you want to just work a couple of hours a day, that's probably not the job for you.
Do you? I know you're not going to sort of be able to answer this, but do you think there is sort of a little bit of a gender inequality in some ways with being a practice owner? And I know both of us know some fantastic female practice owners, but as in actually sort of being able to give the time sort of family-wise and owning a practice?
Maybe, but for us, like, it was great because Zara owns this practice as well, and she wanted to go off on maternity, and she didn't want to have to come back when she would have had to come back, and so we restructured the business, and so we had the flexibility to do that, and so I think it's always easier when there's more people involved in a business. I think the people who miss out the most, or the people who have the toughest time, are the people who are alone in owning a business. Whether it's a business partner, a friend, your spouse, whatever it is, that's what makes it easier. I can't speak from the gender perspective because I've only owned it as one gender, but yeah.
Something to tell us, Ali?
Yeah.
Actually, that's what with if you do share a business with someone, with a friend, how common is it for there to be fallouts and things?
It's so interesting because someone put a survey on one of the implant groups that they're doing research into how practice owners like to buy a practice and whether they would look at shared partnership and things. And you hear a lot of stories of things going wrong, and you don't hear of many of things just going well. If you are the type of person who can just let things go, great. I am not. And so I think you have to be honest with yourself about, if you're really easygoing and you're always like, yeah, okay, whatever, and you're in partnership, you're probably going to be fine. But yeah, no two human beings are ever going to completely agree on something. My advice would be, do it on your own and do it your way. My thing was always, I'm gonna do it my way, and if we fail spectacularly, that's cool, and go back to whatever. But I think it's worse to fail doing it in a compromised way.
Fair enough. We've got a question in from Aston. Who shouldn't own a practice?
Anyone who wants, for me, okay. So this is an interesting question because based on yesterday, the assumption is that people who own a practice want to walk away from the clinical side, work as little as possible, put a team in place to manage the practice, and see the money roll in. Okay. Now, this is a bit harsh because there are excellent practices out there owned by people who are not in the practice. But I take a personal responsibility for what goes on in this building, for the way the staff are treated, for the way the patients are treated, and I love doing what we do. So if you want to just have a business and step away from it, don't own a practice if it's going to bother you that things are going wrong there. Because what you're doing is you're creating a cash cow. Don't create a business, don't own a business if you don't enjoy the problem solving and the responsibility that comes with. Don't own a practice if you're not going to be good with people, which kind of goes without saying, and if you're not going to be organized. And don't own a practice if you want to make lots of money and make it quickly. There's no guarantees in any of that, right? You are better off if you're earning well as an associate and you're happy, then you're better off there, because you think you'll walk into a practice and you'll have, oh yeah, I'll make the decision, I'll buy all the kit I want, I'll do things exactly how I want. But the fact is then suddenly the fiscal responsibility is on you and you go, actually, I can do without that. I can do without that. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No,
I
fair
don't know if that
enough.
helps at all, Aston, but yeah.
Well, he's followed it up with what considerations you should take for setting up, for preparing for a sale of a practice. Someone on the other end.
This is what Mike was talking about. I mean, it's probably not a good question for me to be answering, because this is the least saleable practice in the world. What you want is, if you're going to sell, you need to have, we went through this yesterday. You need to have all your documents ready, right? You need all your associates to have signed contracts. You need all your warranties, your documents, like 500 to 700 documents that you need all lined up. You need to have 3 years of accounts, and you need to have an associate-led practice.
Yeah.
And for us, that's the big thing, that actually a good practice that's run well as a business, they were saying that the owner should be able to at least take home what they bring in.
Yeah.
I take home a quarter of what the associates take home. So yeah, I don't feel I'm maybe qualified to tell people how to set up for a sale because I'm not set up, but that would kind of be what you're looking at.
I think they said as well about sort of, thinking about it in advance, sort of getting everything together well in advance. I do wonder about if you bought a practice and then really changed your mind sort of within a year and then wanted to sell it, so you didn't have then the accounts for 3 years.
No,
what
but the
that run
practice
into?
has accounts for 3 years.
But what if you set up a squat practice?
Oh, right. I see what you mean. Well, so this was our situation, right? Where Imran had set up a squat, but hadn't built it into anything yet. So it was 2 years old and it hadn't turned into anything, and it was very quiet. And we rebranded it and started again from scratch. But we managed to bypass, thanks to his hard work, the construction phase, the HIW phase, and all of that. But essentially, if you set up a squat and you don't see it through, you will lose a lot of money.
Fair enough.
And that's an expensive mistake. Yeah, that's an expensive mistake.
Mistake.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. That was really good fun. If anyone does have any last minute questions, pop them on now. I've definitely learned a lot from today. I think I'm still in the camp of I'm going to hold off on buying a practice for quite a while.
Well, our aim as a practice is, if we can set this up so that it's people's dream jobs, then people don't. If I had loved being in a place and I had freedom to go to courses when I wanted, to do the treatment that I wanted, to work the times that I wanted, why would I take on the hassle? So hopefully, Flo, we take away the hassle. Thank you.
That was great. Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. And this is the last episode of season 1. We'll be taking a short break and then coming back for season 2.
Yes, and thank you to those that tuned in live on Instagram. And if you didn't manage to catch this on Instagram, then you'll find this out. But we're not just on podcast apps on all the devices, but we're also on YouTube. You can watch this video because producer Simon puts it on there. So please check that out, and please remember to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for all the support for season 1. We just thought we'd give this a try, and we've had some really nice messages. So hopefully we can come out with things of value.
Yeah, no, thank you.